What's up guys, Nadem back at it again with another tutorial Thursday. Today we're going to talk about how to process your leads and what I do when I'm processing my leads, what I use in my effects chain. And the method that I use is generally the same. The effects that I use will differ, the order will sometimes differ, but I'll explain. And the track that I'm working on right now, it's kind of like a big room track. So I'll play back the whole track for you guys and explain one by one what I'm doing with the effects on my lead. So let's jump right in. Alrighty, so here, this project, I'm a few hours into working on this one. It changed a lot, much like the artist Brooks. And some great advice I want to give you also from Lazy Rich. He said that, you can have an amazing sound, but if the MIDI is lacking, like the notes, if the notes aren't that great, or the other way around, if it's like great notes but the sound is lacking, you need that good synergy. So don't feel afraid to keep making a unique pattern and try new patterns, because you can see here I've had so many unused patterns. I have all these leads and I kept experimenting. This project started out completely different. It wasn't big room. It was, I had like a normal kick, a normal bass, and then I said, I felt like the kick was lacking. I moved things up and down, a few semitones, and it didn't work out. So I scrapped a lot of stuff. I put a big room kick, and I made some changes to the lead. Now let's play back the whole track. We just have a limiter on there. It's not doing anything. It's just 0 dB. So let's play back the track so you can get an idea. And we'll explain later the processing behind the lead and what I do. So you can see there, I really love the punch. It's a very punchy track, and the percussion I've made to work with the lead. So each time the lead's playing, the snares work with it, the toms work with it. It's really important to give like a nice narrative and a nice tension with that. Like if you have your percussion playing with the lead, notes on the lead, it gives them more meaning than to just have them play random. So you want to experiment with that. It can really give some flavor to your track. So let's explain the effects chain here on the lead. Now the lead is layered with some subtle layers, but predominantly it is the lead. So let's just solo the lead only, and I'm going to turn off the effects one by one. We will loop the first 8 bars because I don't want it to jump to the higher portion just yet. So with me lately with effects, now you can always use effects harshly and totally, manipulate the sound. But I like to get a sound like how I like it generally in the synth. And the reason why I say that is because when you work in the synth, you don't have to be worried about stacking 50 effects, because that can really mess up your workflow. Now you're totally dependent on a crazy effects chain. You can encounter glitches, problems. I like the Brooks approach. Brooks likes to work and make his sound really great as best as he can within the synth, and then he puts minimal effects. Of course, it's trial and error and there's no right or wrong answer, but this is my workflow. First things first, you can see that when I disabled the effects chain, it became very muddy and boomy. First things first, I had this parametric EQ killing. It's just a low shelf, it's not a low cut, which doesn't kill all the lows completely. Instead, it kind of just tames the lows. And so I put that on. Ollie James also does this a lot, and that helped to kill a lot of the lows. Now you might be thinking, hey, well, it lost so much low energy, but the kick is so powerful that these two will fight if it has frequency information there. Next, we have FabFilter Q2 Pro Q, and we have a high pass filter, so a low cut at 120 hertz. I also cut here. I don't usually do this, but like I said, it's always different. And so here I noticed that there was a bit of muddiness, if you will, around this frequency range. So I made a little bell cut to there, little bell curve. Next, so if we play back, so that kind of just cleaned a lot of the muddiness. Now, Oxford Inflator is a great plugin, a zero latency slammer. It is basically like an enhancer, soft clipper, limiter. This will prevent it from clipping, but again, we're working in a digital space, so maybe you want it to clip. In this case, I put the inflator on it. Prevents it from clipping, slams it at 0 dB. Now the inflator isn't doing anything except it also has an output of -0.5. Next, I love this plugin so much. I talk about it a lot. If you haven't watched my tutorial on the Camel Crusher, check it out. Camel Crusher is a fantastic plugin. First things first, I use a preset that I made called just filter, and I don't always use the compressor. The compressor is great, and I actually use that on my vocals a lot in videos or tutorials because it's an auto gain compressor, meaning that as you turn on the knob and crank it up, it'll increase the gain accordingly. So it'll do auto gain adjustment. With the filter, it'll roll it off 16 kilohertz, but not in a way that really takes a lot of the high-end energy away. It kind of adds this crispiness to it, and it also slams it at 0 dB if the signal is clipping. So we have Camel Crusher on there. So you can see it adds a nice little bite at the end, a nice little air. Now FabFilter Saturn is a beautiful plugin. I don't use this all the time. In this case, I used it. I wanted to give a bit of warmth. If you want to give a bit of character, if you want to give either you want to give like a tape model character. And when I say that, if you want to add some warmth, maybe you lost some warmth, you want to add warmth back into it, this can be a method. I also felt like there needed to be a tiny bit of mid-frequency information added. So I added some mid, some treble. This is basically like a little dummy EQ, a very easy EQ, bass, mid, treble, and presence. And so I did that. I kept the high quality on, which doesn't make a huge difference, but again, you gotta experiment. And I'm using the warm tape with 0% drive. Also, the dynamics is important because this adjusts how it squishes the signal. Sometimes you might want to turn it all the way to the right, in the center, experiment with that. So let's see what that's like. So we can see it adds in a lot of bite, a lot of mid and treble, and a tiny bit of presence. Now, to also fatten it up with some more, if you need to, like similarly, in my track Predator on Arnold's vocals, I did kill a lot of energy. And so if you need to return back energy, OneUp series plugins, this one, the OneUp Fatten, basically adds like a analog low shelf EQ, adds some more low frequency information to it. So I'm using it very subtly here, but again, it made a small difference, and it's those small differences that can really give character to your sound. This one isn't very profound, it's a bit more unnoticed. Saturation knob, please watch my tutorial on saturation knob. It's a free plugin, fantastic plugin, and saturation knob does exactly what it says, and it keeps it very simple. Now you can either excite just the low. If you slide this up to keep high, it'll excite just the low. If you slide it to keep low, it'll just excite the high. I kept it in neutral, meaning what? We're exciting everything from low to high. And I kept it very simple, 0.1, like the lowest setting. All right, and last but not least, I added the Waves Deesser. and I'll explain why, and I'll explain a couple of things here. Deesser, typically we think a deesser should be used on vocals. However, a deesser can be used creatively. It can be used on percussion. It can be used on a master. It's used by a lot of waves engineers on masters, on just to really smooth everything out. Because think about it, if you have like highs that kick a bit too high, like a bit too much high end, you know, now it's too crispy, you want to kind of tame the top of it, you can do so with a deesser. Now, not all deessers are equal. Sometimes like FabFilter Pro MB can be a better deesser. You can definitely de-ess using a compressor, but there are different methodologies and they all sound different and how they work with the signal chain. This Waves deesser does clip it at 0 dB. In this case, I wanted that. If you don't want that, you can use something like Waves Renaissance R deesser, or the T-Rax deesser is also really good. They can handle hotter signal chains coming into their path. Now with this, I usually just use the full mix preset. And if you switch it from split to wide, wide basically does the entire signal. Split does it as well, but what split does is it splits the signal into two paths. Like it'll split the low end and the high end to give you a different sounding result. So experiment with it. You might like split on your master because it'll probably keep the low end cleaner. Here I just wanted it just like a broad, do the entire thing. So not that there's one better than the other, but generally you might want to use split on your mastered track. So that's the last thing. You can see there, it's just taming it slightly. You know, it's not suffocating it. It's not doing troll. It's not doing this. And so the reason why I'm going to keep this detached, the reason why I'm using that, because when we go up an octave, this can be dynamic EQ. When we go up an octave, we have more high-end frequency information. And so what better way to, this is what I thought, you know, it might not be the best way. I've seen other guys like Respawn, they do EQ where when the higher octave starts, they turn on an EQ that reduces the high end and boosts some of the low end. That's a very smart way. This is kind of like a lazier approach, but it, at the end of the day, if it sounds good, it's good. And I didn't just move up an octave. The lead is playing from a different synth. So I made a clone of the synth and I tweaked that synth and took a tiny bit of the high-end information away. So there's different things you can do, but I find like the deesser kind of glued the two together, kept them more similar, such that when this part drops, it's not as harsh and it gets tamed. So let's play it back for you. With the sidechain, we're using, well, voice crack. We're using kickstart, 100% free punch. Alright, so hope you guys get an idea. Now, I'm not always using, like, you know, there's been so many projects. I didn't use parametric EQ2 on my lead. I didn't use Saturn on my lead. I didn't use saturation knob or OneUp Fatten. But you have to remember, you have to just go by what your intentions are. What are you trying to explain? What is the sound you're trying to achieve? And what tools do you need to know, you know? You need to know which tools to use in the shed as opposed to just slamming everything onto it. And even if you took this effects chain and you put it on your lead, you won't get the exact same result as mine and vice versa. So I wanted to make this to explain to you guys, you know, what my methodology is when I'm working on a lead. So guys, that wraps it up for this video. I just wanted to show you guys how I process my leads, the methods that I use, and of course yours will always be different, and always trust your ears. If it sounds good, it is good. And just want to show you guys how I go into it, what my process is like. It's always different, but I'm always listening, comparing, and going for a desired sound. So if you guys enjoyed this tutorial, remember to smash the like button. You know what I'm saying? leave a comment. Let me know what kind of tutorials you guys want to see. And remember to stay subscribed. Hit that notification bell so you guys are alerted of streams, uploads. We're also doing a lot of live streams, and please check out my brother's channel as well for live streams if you guys enjoy gaming content or anything like that. Gaz and Dan, link is in the video description. Check that out. And I love you guys. Keep making all kinds of gains. I'll see you guys later.
Yo, Percussion, Miley Percussion, Percussion, Miley Percussion, rep the set, gotta rep the set, chase a chick, never chase a bitch, chase no bitch, mask on, fuck it, mask on, mask on, fuck it, mask on.